Hey everyone, this is Lauren Stine, Manager of Implementation over here at Activate. And today we're going to have a Q&A session. We had quite a few questions sent in before the webinar started today that is going to be a part of the beginning of the presentation. And then once those questions are done, we will go to live questions sent in while I'm presenting. So let's dive right in. Now, one of the most common questions that we actually get for these webinars usually has to do with something with the closing date for QuickBooks or any other accounting system. So what steps do we need to take when closing our books? This came up because we had a question come in when the landed cost is entered for a freight bill after the closing of the previous month in QuickBooks. How do you clear the error log message that pops up after doing the synchronization between Activate and QuickBooks? And will that bill show up in QuickBooks if it shows up in the error log? So let's start by talking about what steps to take to close the books before we get to answer that specific question, because I believe that's all going to be related. So the first thing to do is run a sync with QuickBooks to see if there's any errors. If there are any errors during that sync, you'll need to get those resolved before moving to the next step. And that's going to be a red X on the specific section that the error was received. Once you have the sync errors resolved, then you go into QuickBooks and you modify the closing date to be whatever the new closing date should be. Then immediately after setting that in QuickBooks, run another sync in Activate to set that new closing date in Activate, because Activate needs to know what that updated closing date is before you post any new transactions. So during that sync where we're setting the closing date, make sure that there aren't any new errors that maybe popped up between the time that you closed the books and ran this new sync. If there are any errors, then you need to open the books and resolve those errors before closing them and moving forward. Then once the sync is clear, after you've set the closing date and run a sync, everything is good to go, then you can move along with your day and start posting new transactions. If you receive a sync error about the transaction being prior to the closing date, you'll need to open the books and synchronize the transaction. This occurs if someone posted a transaction that affects the newly closed period before synchronizing that closing date that you just set. This is why it is absolutely imperative to run a sync immediately after modifying the closing date. So that way Activate knows that if people are trying to close the books or people are trying to post transactions that affect those closed books, Activate knows what that updated closing date is so we can prevent you from doing so. If you have a non-QuickBooks closing date related error like a transaction not in balance, that's typically going to mean there's something missing, whether in the warehouse setup, like a GL account is missing. For a lot of times we'll see the purchases account has been cleared out for some reason or another, or maybe they set up a new warehouse and the inventory accounts were not set up, or they're using standard cost for some of their non-inventoried or labor charges and they don't have the cost offset account set up on that warehouse. So you'll see that transaction not in balance error during the sync because there literally is a missing general ledger account that needs to be used for that journal. If all accounts are set up and you're still receiving a transaction not in balance error, then go ahead and contact the support team so we can take a look to see if there's anything else that may have caused that issue. But probably 9 times out of 10, it is a missing general ledger account, whether that be in the warehouse or in the product class. And then another part of that question is, will the posted transaction show in QuickBooks with a sync error? So any transaction listed in an error will be blocked from QuickBooks via the sync until that specific error is resolved, whether it's creating an invoice or synchronizing journals for posted inventory transactions. So for the landed cost question, let's say the landed cost vendor bill, the actual bill that you're creating for that freight, is in the open period, so that's in April. But the transaction that you're posting it against, let's say that's a receipt or a transfer or something, that journal is in the closed period and you're getting an error about the QuickBooks closing date. So what's going to happen during the sync is the vendor bill will post into QuickBooks because that is in the open period, but the journal related to that will be blocked until you open the books and synchronize that transaction. So specifically for this landed cost question, what happens when attempting to post a landed cost session which affects a closed period? So the answer to this question depends on the timing of the last sync and closing your books. If you posted a landed cost bill where the bill itself is in the open period, but the journal is related to a prior period, the bill will show in QuickBooks, but the journal entry for the cost will be posted as of the first day of the open period. Now that's if you ran the sync after closing your books and the new closing date was set in Activate. So Activate knows to not affect that prior period. You'll also get a message on that transaction, can we change the date to be the first day of the open period? So again, it's really important to run a sync before posting any new transactions when closing your books. If you don't and you post something like a landed cost and the journal related to that prior period will be blocked from synchronizing, but the vendor bill could come through based on the example that I've been going over. So what are my options? Since the issue stems from closing the books and posting transactions affecting those closed periods before synchronizing that new closing date, you'll need to open the books, run a sync, close the books, sync again to set that new date, and then continue on with your day as long as everything is clear in the sync. Because in essence, if you're posting landed costs that affects a receipt that was posted last month, then your last month's books aren't truly closed because you're still posting transactions that affect last month. So you may want to rethink, maybe we shouldn't close our books monthly, maybe we go bi-monthly or quarterly or something, especially if you're going to be posting landed costs. Or let's say if you have lot serial control maybe, and you're posting landed costs across lots that were received in that prior period, or the examples can go on and on. It's pretty much, if you don't want to open your books and that closing date is set, then it's going to post it as of the first day of the open period. If you close your books and then you post transactions before you synchronize that new date, you're going to have to open the books to sync that transaction over. Let me know if anybody has any questions on where to close the books in QuickBooks. If you needed that information, we can take a look at that, and I can show you where that is. So the next question we have is, please explain why Activate cannot sync the sales order number to QuickBooks. Perhaps a field should be created in Activate that would sync the sales order field in QuickBooks. We actually do get asked this question. I wouldn't say frequently, but it does come up from time to time. So let's take a look at the difference between creating this directly in QuickBooks and Activate. So when creating invoices from a sales order in QuickBooks, so you've created a sales order in QuickBooks, you'll see the related sales order number in the sales order number field. So let me open QuickBooks. And let's create a sales order for Abercrombie. So we've got sales order number 1 because we've never created a sales order in the demo QuickBooks company because we do it all in Activate. But let's just say we do. And we'll order 1 and we'll just do 50 cents. Okay, so we'll do Fort Worth. Save. Yes. Okay, so we're going to create the invoice. So since we created the invoice from a sales order in QuickBooks, we have this sales order number field right here. Okay? But when you're creating invoices in Activate, we're not creating or synchronizing the sales orders to QuickBooks because your items are maintained in Activate. They've been deactivated in QuickBooks. And this item that you see on the invoice is based on the product class from Activate. Because again, the items are in Activate only. So since you created this invoice from a sales order, you're going to have this sales order number available to you. But if you create an invoice as a standalone invoice, that field is not available. So we're going to hit yes. And if we check a standalone invoice, which is going to be one that was from Activate, we'll just open up this one. You can see that sales order number is nowhere to be found on this window in QuickBooks. That's because there is no related sales order in QuickBooks to assign this invoice to. So even if we could, even if we had that available to sync the sales order number over into QuickBooks, there's nowhere for us to put that information in QuickBooks without a workaround. Let's say the PO number or something like that. Or if you wanted to put it in an FOB, that stuff's going to synchronize over. But we don't have a sales, it's just not available for a standalone sales order in QuickBooks. So that's why we do not synchronize the sales order number field from Activate. So what are your options? Use order number as the invoice number. So as a workaround, you can go into Configuration Manager and choose to use the sales order number as the invoice number. So that way, if the users that are in QuickBooks need to know which sales order this is related to, there's no question because the invoice number itself matches the sales order number. So let's take a look at where that setting is in Activate. So we go to File, Configuration Management, Sales Orders, Order Options. We hit Edit, and this Use Order Number as Invoice Number. So we hit Save. And now let's open up a sales order in Activate because, again, all the sales orders are going to be done in Activate once you've connected to Activate with QuickBooks. We will open, I don't know if I have any recent sales orders in here. I don't. We'll just open one of these. We've got stuff scheduled so we can create an invoice. And notice this order number is A1509T. So we'll create an invoice as of today. Hit Invoice. Let's see, we've got missing lot or serial numbers on line 5. We'll just go ahead and select them. Let's see, do we have any other? I don't think there's any other items that are serial or lot controlled. So now you can see that the invoice is A1509T. So that way when it synchronizes over to QuickBooks, there's no question on which sales order this is related to. If your sales order and invoice numbers don't match and for some reason you need to research that in QuickBooks, it becomes a little difficult because you'd have to open Activate, open the customer invoice window, look up the specific invoice number, and then you'll see the order number right here. But again, if you have that option checked, they match, so there's no question. So let's see. Let's change the status to scheduled and see if there's anything else that we can invoice. There is, and I don't see any other lot controlled items. So we'll create a second invoice. I just want to show you what it looks like when you create a second invoice with that option checked. So now if we go to the invoices screen, now the second invoice is going to have a -1 because that's the second one that you created. The original one is going to stay as the exact match of the sales order, and the second one is going to be -1. So if you're creating 2, 3, 4, 5 invoices, they're all going to start with the sales order number, and then the ones after the first invoice you created are going to have -1, -2, -3. So again, there's no question on what sales order this information is related to. So we had another question on, is there a report that shows what activities synchronized with QuickBooks for a specific date? So we don't have a standard report that to show what specifically was synchronized to QuickBooks for a specific date or date range. You can use the audit trail in QuickBooks to find what was updated or created for a specific day, but again, we don't have a specific report for that in Activate. However, we do have an inventory detailed journal report, which can be filtered on a specific date or date range. And this report will show you what posted within a specific date range. It shows the entry as well as the session, warehouse, the general ledger accounts used. Any entry with a general ledger account that's not showing, that means that that information has not synchronized to QuickBooks. but the ones with the GL account have been synchronized. So if we go to, I'll just go ahead and close the sales order, go to reports, inventory management, transactions, detailed journal. Now we have the detailed journal, and then we also have detailed journal by account, and the by account is going to break it out by the specific general ledger account. But we'll go to the detailed journal, and we can filter based on a specific journal. So if you know which journals they are, you can filter on that. You can filter on a specific date. So we'll do year to date and hit preview. So we do have some. So this is going to be the date of the journal, and it doesn't look like that was synchronized over yet. So that's what I was talking about. See, the debit and credit accounts don't have any information listed. That means this information has not been synchronized to QuickBooks. So let's change this just to be all, so you can take a look at specific journals. Here we have receipts. So we've got the journal ID, the date, the specific type of transaction that it was, and we've got the session numbers, the warehouse, the quantity, and the amount, and then also the specific accounts used for debit or credit. So you can use this as a way to audit what was sent for a specific journal. So if you, for some reason, you see a journal and it just maybe doesn't look right to you for some reason, or maybe the accounts look funny, what you can do is you can use this inventory detail journal to research that specific journal. And then again, the audit trail in QuickBooks should give you the information on what's been synchronized, because the audit trail will show you what's been updated or created for specific dates. Okay, and then we had quite a few questions come in about reports, so I tried to include them all in the same slide. This one may take a minute. What reports do you have to figure out sales trend per customer for each product? So we have a comparative sales by product class, by customer report. This report is grouped by customer, then by product class. So within the product class sections, you'll see each item with a breakout of sales for today, this month, this year, and previous year. You'll also see the quantity sold, amount, cost, margin, and profit percent for each time period. So let's take a look at that report. And again, that's in the customer information, customer sales reports. It's the comparative sales by product, by class, by customer. It's kind of a mouthful. We'll hit select, and we'll just run it for everything. And you can do show today, show month to date, previous month, year to date, previous year, include product sales. You can do it as of a specific date. So if you wanted to see as of maybe March 1st, so you could see the, previous month, year to date, all that stuff based on that specific date, you can filter on customer ID, product class. And so here you'll see, okay, so we've got customer ABC has purchased, and you can also expand the tree on the side here. They've purchased stuff from accessories, equipment, furniture, shipping, and supplies. So within the accessories, they've purchased this pocket calendar, and it's the previous year you sold 10 for $32.50 with a cost of $18.50, a margin of $14, and a profit percent of 43. So this will give you the breakout for these specific time frames, and it's just a total quantity and amount for each of these time periods, and it'll break it out as totals per product class as well. And if we go to, it'll also total it based on the specific customer, so you can see that information based on today, this month, this year, or previous year. And then we have, what report do you have to be able to see at a glance the sales for the past 3 months, 6 months, and yearly? So you could use the same report as above, or any one of the summary reports available, some of which can be set up as a dashboard report to refresh at certain intervals. Examples of these reports are going to be the sales invoice summary by period, sales invoice summary chart, sales order summary by period, etc. To show you these, let's take a look at the dashboard utility. So again, you can use this report, or let's take a look at the dashboard. So the dashboard is already set up for my demo. It's got, the sales order by sales rep and then sales invoice summary by period. And for the charts and the graphs, you can modify the parameters to be based on specific date ranges. In future versions of Activate, we will actually have a larger list of report filtering options such as 2015 quarter 1, 2015 quarter 2, the whole year 2015. We're going to have a very robust way to filter based on specific date ranges. We are definitely adding that functionality in future versions. So let's take a look at the report parameters for this report. So right now it's grouped by month. So you can see month, you can see day, week, quarter, year. And these are all just standard breakouts. You can do show chart or don't show the chart, and then list is yes or no as well. And you can filter based on specific invoice dates, specific branch, salesperson, product class. We have a whole bunch of filters available for this report. Hit done, it'll refresh, and now you see quarter by quarter the sales invoice summary. And that's going to be the dollar amount for your sales invoices. And so we've got that report. We've got, scheduled orders by product class. If we go to add report, you can see all the available reports we have set up as dashboard reports. Now these are going to be typically one-page reports. It's all going to be summary information. You can make reports and add them as a dashboard type as well whenever you add reports to Configuration Manager. And you can configure each report to print specific information here on the dashboard. You can also set it to refresh at specific intervals. I definitely recommend maybe every 15 minutes to an hour. If you get into every minute and you add like maybe a custom report that's running a bunch of queries, it has the potential to bog down your server if it's constantly refreshing. Maybe it's constantly refreshing and hasn't finished the first query before it starts refreshing the report again. So I would definitely use maybe 15 minutes or an hour if it's something that you want to see on a pretty regular basis. So to set up a report as a dashboard report, you go to Configuration Management, Reports, Report Catalog, Order Processing, and I'll just show you what it is. So document type is going to be Dashboard Panel. So if we have this as Dashboard Panel, it'll be available to add there. But again, that gives you a chance to see sales at a glance for, if you wanted to do, we'll change this to be monthly again. So the last month that you actually had sales, obviously this demo data doesn't have as much information as your databases will, at least for prior transactions. But, we've got October, September, July 2015. These are months that all had sales, and these are the total dollar amounts for each. Okay, and then just a comment on another report question that I had from another customer. Last year month to date. It's not actually the full year. So if we go to, let's do completed orders, date completed, I believe maybe it's last year. It's okay, sorry, it's last year is the filter, but if you, in this drop down, it looks like last year, but when you select it, it says last year month to date. So it's not the full year, it's the year up until this month, which we don't have any completed orders for that date range. But we are improving our date filters in future versions. So not only will you be able to see last year, but you can specify 2015 quarter one instead of having to do date complete between of, 1/1/2015 to 3/31/2015. It'll be just that specific quarter. You'll select the year and then which quarter. And if you want product specific sales reports, we have a bunch of product sales reports in the order processing section of the reports menu. So order processing, product sales reports, we have comparative sales by product class. So it's kind of like the report I was talking about earlier, except this one is not related to customers. It's just specifically for the products. Then we have product by product class, product by sales category, product class summary, and sales category summary. So let's take a look at the comparative sales by product class. And again, this is going to be the same kind of report that we looked at a minute ago, but it's only going to be based on product class. And you'll see the breakouts for each product as well as totals for each product class. And then you also have the report total for each different time frame. Okay, so what report do you have to keep on top of shortages for inventory? And this one kind of rolls into the next question is what report do you have to be able to see the quantity available of items on a weekly basis? So since these two questions are semi-related, they can actually be checked on in the same report. A lot of our customers are going to use the stock on hand report to see what's on hand, on ordered, scheduled, and available. So let's go ahead and take a look at that stock on hand. It's in the warehouse section and it's stock on hand. We'll hit select. This one doesn't have a date range. It's as of the time that you print the report. And so this gives you the on hand, the stocking unit, the on order, required, scheduled, reserved, and available quantities. And if you use locations, it shows the primary location, I believe, is the location that's shown in the product warehouse summary location field. And so this is a great report to see, if you have shortages, what quantity is available for a specific item. You can drill down to, you can take a look at the warehouse, you can filter this report to be, I want to only see availability for items that are negative. So that's product warehouse summary dot available. Hit OK. Is less than, we'll do less than or equal to 0. Hit OK. And so this is going to filter the report to show anything that's less than or equal to 0. And so now you see anything that's gone negative and anything that you may need to think about ordering. Because maybe you want to have more than 0 on hand for some of these items. It just depends on what the item is and what you're needing to do with it. Now again, this is per warehouse, but not per bin location. It's going to be an overview of the total quantity for each item in each warehouse. If you utilize bin locations, you can refer to the inventory location restock and primary location restocking reports. So the location restock, this is going to show you the locations as well as the warehouse, the stock level, on hand, available, on order, required, scheduled, and reserved for each of the products. And then we also have the primary location restocking report, which warehouse, location, product ID, and product class are all available filters. So this one looks like we've only got 2 items that are negative in a specific bin location in the primary location, so they need to be restocked, and this shows you which ones need to be done, which I believe these 2 are assemblies. So you would just need to build those. For a quick glance on what needs to be reordered based on item availability, on-hand quantity, and warehouse settings for min, max, reserved quantities, you can check out the inventory reorder report. We'll take a look at this one. It's going to show you all items that are currently stocked at a level below their listed reorder reports or reorder points. And it'll also show you the preferred vendor information as well as any other vendor listed on that product. It shows you the on hand, anything listed on the sales order, what the current availability is, if it's listed on an order. Here's your net available, your minimum, maximum, and reorder quantity. And then it also has a recommended quantity, and then if you wanted to, the person that's running the report can handwrite what they should reorder on here. Now, obviously, a lot of our customers aren't going to want people to be handwriting what should be ordered, so you would also need to turn around and manually create purchase orders. So I would recommend using the inventory management tab on business alerts to perform any reordering, since it gives you the ability to create POs from a list of items, and you can also group your reorder based on a specific vendor, so you can get your reordering done in an efficient manner. So if we go to business alerts, which you can either click the alerts button on your icon bar, or you can go to alerts, business alerts, and that will open this business alerts utility. Click on inventory management. This is your inventory management reorder section. You can filter on a specific warehouse. So let's filter on D. You can see the products that either have negative availability or have gone below their minimum stock quantities, and you can see the available quantity on order on hand here as you scroll to the right. You can also see if there's any reserved quantities, your min max information, if there's a vendor product ID, the vendor last cost, the product last cost, as well as the average cost. And if we go over here, we can click group by vendor. So this is going to group it by a specific vendor, and the vendor that it groups it by default is going to be the preferred vendor selected on that item. So E10 has Adams Paper as a preferred vendor, and it's suggesting that we order 210 at a suggested cost of $6.50. So if we click reorder, this is where we can actually go through and select items to order. We can adjust the PO quantity, and we can create our purchase orders from here. We can either select to, I don't see any of, let's see if any of these have multiple products listed. Here we go, Carlisle. So if we wanted to go ahead and order all these products from Carlisle, we would just click this, Carlisle. When we hit create POs, it's going to create a PO for Carlisle for all of these items based on the specific, the suggested quantity. Also, if you use, let's cancel selections. If you use inventory assemblies, you can also refer to the assembly component requirements report. This report is going to show the finished good warehouse information as well as recommended order quantities for the components based on the finished good availability. So we've got this coffee French roast. We have 0 available, a minimum quantity of 100, a maximum quantity of 500, a reorder quantity of 0, and a required of 500. It also shows the availability and the required quantities for us to fulfill this 500 required, which is the max quantity. Most of the reports show quantity on hand instead of available. Can you show us how to add a field to existing reports? That is a whole nother bear in of itself. So I showed you a few reports that have item availability by default. So if you wanted to add that, then we can definitely, point you in the right direction. We can drop that on a report if you wanted to. Just let us know if you wanted to do that. And then also if you wanted a completely custom report, we can point you in the direction to get that done through maybe one of our Activate consulting partners, if that's something that you were interested in. So we had a couple of questions about bill of material, kit, COGS, and discounts. So how can we update bill of materials for a kit or assembly item? So the question was, how do we mass replace item of bill of materials? Now, the only way that we can do that right now is through, you can either do it as, manually one by one, you can alter the bill of materials list, or we can do a bill of material import, because the import will replace the list of components on that specific finished good. I'm not going to go into, I'm not going to do an import, but I'll show you where it is. It's File, Import Data, and that's going to be the product component import. So if we create mapping, you can see that you would map the product ID, the component product ID, as well as the quantity used, and then you can give it a sequence and let Activate know whether or not that component is going to be variable. So that's really the best way to update your entire list of components, especially if you created a new item and you wanted to switch it out. You could also use, to get that data out of Activate, to do a massive replace. If you were going to do something like that, you could do an Excel query off of the product component view, and you can use that to replace it in Excel. You can just do a find and replace for the component. You can switch it out for the new component and then use that as the import. So that'll give you a ability to update component lists on the fly for all of them at the same time. A couple of customers that are doing, thousands of assemblies, and if they change an item or create a new item, want to add that, it can be kind of an undertaking to get that done. So again, the way to do that is an Excel query on product component, find and replace to update that new component product ID, and then run that as a product component import. And then we also had a question about kits. So whenever you invoice a kit item, the sales account used is the account assigned to the kit item on the sales order, but the cost of goods sold accounts used for the invoice are based on the specific component instead of the kit COGS. Now, the logic behind that is because the kit itself isn't incurring any cost of goods sold. It's the items in that kit that have the cost of goods sold for that specific invoice, because the kit is non-inventoried. The items are what are inventoried. So Activate is going to use the cost of goods sold assigned to the product class or another grouping to do your income and cost of goods sold, to use that based on what's assigned to the components instead of the kit item. Now, for the assembly item, it's going to use the income and cost of goods sold assigned to the finished good. And the reason behind that is because you're invoicing the finished good as its own product. So it's going to use the income and cost of goods sold for the finished good only, because the cost of the items is rolled up into the finished good. So therefore, it's going to use the COGS for that finished good because it is, again, its own item. But kits aren't their own item. They're more like a package of items that you put together. So the cost isn't the kit itself. It's going to come from the components listed. So that's why we do it that way. Also, we have, can you set up a discount item and take a percentage discount on the items listed above it? We don't have a way to do that in Activate to set up an item to be a specific percentage off. But on the sales order, you can create a discount product that's like an other charge. And you can add that to the sales order. I don't know if I have. Let's see if we have any other charges. We'll just do restocking fee. So you could do 3.75 times 0.05 to take a percentage. And so that's going to be 19 cents. So no, we don't have a specific, hey, we've got this restocking fee or some kind of discount product, and it's always going to be 5% off of the line above it. You're going to have to do it kind of like Excel. So we want to add, 5% on top of this, or maybe take off it as a discount. So we'll do it as a discount. Negative 3.75 times 0.05 is 19 cents off. So that's how you can do that discount on a line as its own line, and you can calculate that based on a specific percentage. It's going to be kind of like Excel. So that's a workaround for you to try to see if that's going to be something feasible for you to do. Default shipping information. Why can't there be a default ship via method for a vendor, since there's a default terms code for both customers and vendors? Well, we actually do have a default ship via for purchasing. So I'm going to go ahead and just show all of the information here on screen. We have defaults for customer ship to location ID, ship to tax category. We also have sales order, ship via FOB, product for shipping charges, and purchase order, ship via FOB and warehouse. All of that information is available to set as defaults. So I'll just show you where that is real quick, and then we'll move on to the next question. So we have customer defaults. So we have ship to tax category. That's where we're going to pull the tax rate. And then also the ship to location ID. That's going to be something you can set up. It defaults to 1. You can change it to main or something. Then there's default terms. So if you create a new customer, this is the information that's going to default. Then sales orders. We have default ship via as ground, FOB, default product for shipping charges. Now that's going to be a product that has a shipping item type. And then we also have for purchasing the ship via default for purchasing, as well as FOB, default warehouse, and default terms. So that information is there. If that's not specifically what you were asking for, if it's based on a specific vendor ship via, the specific vendor information, is going to be done in QuickBooks, but you do have the default ship via for the purchasing options in Activate. So when we issue a PO, our vendor will often have back orders or delays with some of the products we order. It's critical that our sales staff be able to view a product and advise our customers specific delays. So when I receive an order confirmation from our vendor, and the majority of the order product has an ETA date, say June 1st, I can update our PO to reflect that date, but how do I show that certain backorder delay product from the PO has a June 5th ETA and another line has June 30th and so forth? So we have our standard shipping dates for the purchasing. We have requested, promised, not before, not after, just like on our sales orders. But if you need to know specific dates for each line, since our purchase orders don't have an ordered, scheduled, and back ordered quantities, they only have the ordered, received, outstanding, and invoiced, you'll need to do custom fields as a date field for each purchase order detail line. So to look at the standard purchase order fields, we have the requested, not before, not after, promised. That's going to be based on your vendor for the entire purchase order. And then you can also see that information reflected on the Purchasing Management tab of Business Alerts for the requested and promised dates. Now again, so if you need it on the line, you'll need to set up a custom field. So when you highlight the line, you'll have a custom field, a custom window that pops up. So you can set the ETA for each specific line to be a different value. And if we needed to, we could drop that information on the purchase order report for you. That wouldn't be a problem at all. And that's done in Configuration Manager. So we go to Custom Fields, Purchase Order Detail, because this question was specifically about purchase orders. We can add set the type to be date, hit save. It's going to say everybody should be logged out for saving changes, but I'm the only one in. Hit OK. We'll close out. We'll open that purchase order again. And now you see we have this custom field. So you'll be able to set this probably, let's see if we can get one that has multiple lines. So we'll be able to set this for each line. We can say this one will be today. And this one will be, the 4th. I guess we should go in the future, May 4th, and so forth. And we can do that on and on and on. So, they can take a look at the report if we add this to a report, or they can look line by line and see what the custom field should be. And you can do that per line. So that way your users can know if something's on back order when the estimated time of arrival is going to be. So let's take a look at some of the questions that have been asked. So to clarify, we did get asked, why would we be creating a sales order invoice in QuickBooks? You wouldn't be. I was just demonstrating the reason why we cannot synchronize the sales order number over to QuickBooks, because that has been asked a few times. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear, that information just simply is not available on a standalone invoice created by Activate. Now that's goes for just any standalone invoice. If you create a new invoice in QuickBooks, you can see that sales order number is not there. Obviously, we never recommend creating standalone anything in QuickBooks when it comes to your items. Anything related to your items should definitely be done in Activate, not QuickBooks. But I just wanted to make sure that point was clear, that we don't sync it because it's just not available to us. Okay. So we do have a question on where do you close the books? So you can do that based on any date go to Edit Preferences. This is done in QuickBooks Accounting, or if you use Intact, it's done in your Intact company. Company Preferences, set date, password, and this closing date is where you would set that. So you can set this to any date that you like. You don't have to close it based on each like a specific block of time. It's going to be based on a specific date. Hit OK. I don't have an admin password on my company, so it prompted me to add one. You hit OK to close the preferences, and then you run a sync with Activate to set that new closing date in Activate. So we can, not allow users to post transactions in a closed period. Okay, and then we have what is value 2 used for. That goes back to the report filters. So let's just go back to inventory detail journal. If we set the date to value 1 is going to be, so if we set this to, let's say, equal to, value 1 is the only one that's going to be available because you're only filtering on that one value. But if you set this to, let's say, between, so now you see this and appears, and then value 2 is also available. So value 2 is only going to be used when you're using a range of information. Can a kit item contain multiple serial numbered items? Yes, a kit can contain multiple serial numbered items. So if we open a kit, I don't believe we have any serial number items here, so I'm going to add one. And we'll say this kit includes 2. So cow 10 pack, we're going to add that to a sales order. Add a customer. And on the components tab, you'll be able to, we don't have enough available at this moment for this specific warehouse, so we're not going to be able to schedule it, but you'll be able to select one serial number, and then the next serial number will be available to you as well. So you can select multiple serial or lot numbers for a specific component on a kit. Feel free to check out our help site at help.activate.com. We actually have, if any of you have hired any new people recently, we have added to our training page to be more robust, so we can go ahead and take a look at that. We've changed the help site a little bit, so now our getting started has a drop down, so it's easier to get to training. And we go to training, and then we have each of these sections links to specific checklists, just talking about improvements to our help site, and then the checklist will take you through what you need to do to train on that specific section. So our help site is a great tool for existing users as well as new users to get to know Activate. We also have the Learn Activate pages. All of our webinars that we've recorded are on there. This is where you also get your updates for Activate. You can submit support requests. You can get connected to a support rep based on your appointments that you set with them to get connected. And then you can also search our help site based on specific keywords to look up any information specific to what you're looking at in Activate. And on top of that, when you're on a specific Activate screen, you can hit F1, and that will take you to a specific page related to the screen you're looking at in Activate. So as always, I hope you got a lot of good information out of this Q&A, and hope to see you at the next webinar that we'll be hosting in May. And I hope you have a great day, and thank you for your time.